Born in Salem, Massachusetts, a free state, Sarah's family were told they had to segregate. The Remonds believed that they must educate, but the best schools in Salem wouldn't integrate. They were self-made business people and activists, a family of upspoken worldly strategists. Their home was a hub for the abolitionist movement, a place and a space for self-improvement. The books that were shelved, the lectures that were held, the lodges that would dwell meant that Sarah was propelled. Their house was a home for those fleeing slave states, offering a place to stay and a chance to change fates, and Sarah's family would loudly advocate that no skin tone needed to dominate. Her parents made sure she understood the laws of liberty, that segregation and slavery could be pushed into history. Though at times black people were outcast, a change would happen if they spoke up and were steadfast. Wade in the water. At sweet 16, Sarah starts to speak up. At abolitionist lectures, audiences were struck by her compelling voice and her grounded words. Her empathy and argument made slavery absurd. 1853, the moment Sarah takes a seat at a theatre she sat, not giving in to defeat. She paid for a ticket, a front row treat. When she was asked to move, she refused to concede. The segregated seats for black people was known as nigger heaven. Sarah, 26, had had enough of this oppression. She took the theatre to court, fought and won. The theatre had to integrate the seats and pay a $500 sum. Wade in the water, children, wade. In 1858, she sails the Atlantic to Liverpool, crossing the slave routes her ancestors sailed before. Back in America, white people saw her as something less, but in Britain she was accepted, as she confessed.
I have been received here as a sister by white women for the first time in my life. I have received a sympathy I was never offered before.
For 7 years she told shocking tales to audiences in Britain. From London to Warrington to Glasgow, all would listen. She didn't hold back on details that were gory. She knew it was essential to telling slave stories. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Then she came to Manchester, where cotton was king, and Sarah knew she had to really let her speech sing. She kept to the task and she didn't change track, quick to point out the profits being made on slave backs.
I ask you, raise the moral public opinion until its voice reaches the American shores. Aid us thus until the shackles of the American slave melt like dew before the morning sun. I ask for special help from the women of England. Women are the worst victims of slave power. I am met on every hand by the cry, cotton, cotton. I cannot stop to speak of cotton while women and men are being brutalized.
Audiences were taken in by the talk of racial injustice and slavery. Sarah was praised for her passion and for her bravery. Manchester heard the suffering of those across the sea and added their voices, asking for people to be free. Sarah had talked of womanhood and family, of being treated like animals, a call for humanity. In the echoing chamber of the Athenaeum Lecture Hall, Manchester audiences were left enthralled. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Sarah always kept speaking up for the oppressed and maligned. The suffragist movement she also got behind. She moved to Florence, became a doctor, on to Rome, fell in love, got married, made Italy her home. She was a generous spirit and an outstanding speaker, a passionate learner and a humanitarian teacher. History can be rewritten, even if the past remains the same. Let Sarah Parker Remond be a household name. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade. In the water, oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water.
All right, welcome to our special presentation with Professor Beverley Bryan. This presentation has attracted just under 1,000 people who wanted to attend the online session. And we know some of them had a problem logging on. It depends whether you use Zoom or Eventbrite. So we gave people some time to actually sort their logging on issues out, because those logging on issues are totally beyond our control. But we know some people had those issues, so we give them a bit of time to sort that out. And hopefully you're all now logged in and ready to listen and hear from Professor Beverley Bryan and her interview or her discussion partner, Dr. Michelle Asantewaa. We will take questions at the end. So after the sister stops speaking, we'll take questions at the end of the conversation, and we'll use the chat function on the whole. So we'll take questions after the conversation is over. Now, our host for today is Dr. Michelle Asantewaa, and she in herself has a huge background when it comes to activism and writing and literature. She's got a PhD in literature. She specializes in Ghanaian comfort. She's also a publisher as well as being an author herself, and she's course leader on two of our courses, the Mason James Baldwin course and the African Resistance Leaders course. So she's going to take us through an illustrated conversation with Professor Beverley Bryan. And after that conversation is over, we'll take some questions and answers using the chat function. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Dr. Michelle Asantewaa.
Thank you. In case you didn't know who that was, it's Tony Warner. Tony Warner, who is the founder of Black History Walks and is currently an honorary research fellow at U.C.L, where this is what's being brought to you via. So yeah, I'm pleased to be doing this. This is a second of it's a repeat. We've done this before, but in this instance, it's going to be fully archived, recorded and available via the U.C.L platform and website, and also the Black History Walks YouTube channel as well. So it's wonderful to be able to document this piece of history with this beautiful sister before me. You look absolutely stunning, Sister Beverley. Do you mind if I call you Sister Beverley? I always ask this because I prefer it, if that's okay. If you can unmute yourself. Yeah, you do, because you did it before. So it's just where that the furthest.
Where it is. Stop treating me like an old lady.
Anyway, yeah. So thank you for honoring us again with. As Tony said, there are more people than we actually had the last time. You seem to be growing in popularity as the time goes on. I'm hoping that everyone, because I do see messages in the chat, everyone can hear us. If you can't hear us, please try and maybe go out and come back in, because it could be your speakers, because other people are able to hear quite well. As Tony said, the questions, which I'll leave time enough for us to do at the end, but it's a light conversation with Sister Beverley Bryan. But before we go into, I just want to do the official bio to introduce Dr. Beverley Bryan, who is co-author of the classic Heart of the Race, Black Women's Lives in Britain, which was first published in 1985. It detailed the experiences of ordinary Black women and their fight for equality from post-war up to 1980s Britain. Dr. Bryan was a co-founder member of the Brixton Black Women's Group, which a Saturday school organizer, mainstream primary school teacher who pioneered Black history teaching in her classroom in the 1970s, and a member of the British Black Panther Movement, a lifelong educator. Dr. Beverley Bryan is now a retired professor of language education from the University of the West Indies, the Mona campus in Jamaica, and obviously a lot more. And quite frankly, I am very much interested in that lot more. So I will start to share my screen, and thank you so much for the images that you provided so that we could do this. Let me just share that screen and let me know if everybody can see it okay. Yep. All right, so where we're at, it's beyond the Black Panthers, because we know that's one element and one aspect of your life, but of course there's a lot more than that. And so, which is why, thank you, I must thank you for enabling us to do a version of this with Sister Dr. Erna Brodborough some months ago.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I might have sent you the video link anyway when you get the chance to look at it. It was absolutely
Love to see it. Yeah.
wonderful. And so my particular interest when I'm thinking about, you know, the ordinary that do extraordinary things is really going back into their past, their ancestry, trying to understand what shaped them into the present being and powerhouse, if you like, that we have now. So in this case, I don't know whether, can you see the screen, Sister Beverley?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, so take us through this. There's a young person to the end, if people can see. Yeah, and then there's a lovely regal looking elder in the center. Do you want to tell us what this
Okay, I can tell you that the woman sitting on the small veranda is my grandmother. Yes, Ada Bedford. She was born about 1880. Yes. That house she's sitting in was veranda was built by my uncle. He was one of those of the Windrush generation who went to the UK in the 1950s. And the money he sent back was to build that house. It was the first house on that piece of land belonging to my grandfather. And what happened was that my grandfather and grandmother were the people who lived there, but also there were a lot of children. And I'm not sure who the child is. It might be me, but it could have been one of my cousins, because a lot of us came to stay in that house when our parents followed my uncle Gussie. He was the first one who went to London. And then he sent for my mother, and my mother sent for my father, and they sent for my aunt, my uncle and aunts, and so on. So that was like the core of the family, the biggest family home we had, even though it was like, I think two bedrooms and a living room and a little veranda. That was the core of the first house we had on land belonging to my grandfather. It was a core that sent us all, most of my family, to the UK as migrants.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So is this house still there, and what is it used as?
Okay, it was there. It went through a lot. It's still there. It went through a lot of iterations. At one point, it was taken over. It was added to. My uncle added a bit to the left and a bit to the right. So in fact, there were three kind of small country houses. This was built about like 1952 or something. So there was about three of them together. And for decades, it was squatted. And finally, in I think it was 2012, two of my cousins, we decided that we were going to take it back because it was going to rack and ruin. It was rotting down. So we took it back, and that particular house I turned into what is in fact now a guest house. So if you go online, I'm not advertising it. It has been restored, and it's now something that people come. It's on Airbnb. People come and stay there. So that round part, that house, that room at the front, is now a very small room that you can stay in, but it was in fact my my bedroom with about 5 of us slept in that slept in that room. No, maybe not so many. At least 3, between 3 and 5 of us, depending how many little people were coming to stay, you know, with my grandparents at the time. Yeah, at least 3 of us. I know my 2 sisters and I, we definitely slept in that room all the time, but sometimes other people had to come in.
Okay, thank you.
It's been revived. We revived it because it is family. It is family land, and it's something we didn't want to go into complete disrepair and be overwhelmed with squatters.
No, and a lot of these homes that you then return back to and feel very much committed to because of that ancestral connection. They're kind of labors of love, aren't they?
You can say that again.
Yeah, but it's good that you're able to transform it.
On his grass.
Okay. Yeah, and I like the this barrel there. I can connect and relate to that.
Yes.
You call it barrel or drum? We call it drum as well as barrel.
Either. For water, it's a drum. For if it's clothes from foreign, it's a drum. It's a barrel.
And you would use that to store water, right?
Yes, if something you recycle. Yes, after it's brought, it's come with all the things from foreign. Then it becomes a water drum.
Were you part of that? Did you do that? Were you involved in the fetching water? And
yes. I had to go down. There's in every community there's some place called standpipe, and that's where we had before I went to the UK. Definitely, yes, we had to fetch water because there was no pipe water in the house. The toilet bathroom was the same. It was at the bottom of the. Well, I just remember it's seeming really far, but it's probably not more than about 30 yards. But in the night, if you wanted to go to the bathroom, go to the latrine. When you were like 7 or 8, it seemed really far. And there were
really far.
Yes.
And really dark and really terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah, so I know. I did that.
The standpipe was. And being, the oldest girl and strongest girl, that's one thing I had to do is fetch water.
Okay, that gives us quite a nice sort of image of a background that I certainly can very much relate to. Generations different, some generations after you, but it's the same experience that I can relate to.
Yeah, and that was Portland. For those people who are Jamaicans, that my parish is Portland. Okay.
And these are your parents, and who were in the hand of your parents? What are they?
That was my oldest brother is in my father. My father's name is Leaford, and the oldest brother, he's the one who came and worked on the buses. He was a conductor on London Transport, and in his hand is my brother Leonard. He was born in England. And in my mother's hands, in her arms, is Everton. He was the second born son, also born in England, and they were born soon after both of my parents came to the UK. Yes, that is the kind of family photo you see, isn't it? There's a lot of that. You could probably do an exhibition of these family photos.
Absolutely.
Migrants, as soon as you come scattered, and the first thing you want to do is to put your family together and take that picture to say, now we're whole, and send it back for your children who you've left behind, who you're thinking about, and who you're thinking about how they're going to join you.
Absolutely. What did your parents do before they came?
Oh, okay. My father worked in the post office. I must have been Ferry Hill Post Office. Yes, he had very good handwriting. So I think.
Oh.
My mother, as soon as, to tell the truth, as soon as she came to, is it sounding noisy to you from where you are? Can you hear a lot of wind?
We just heard something, but other than that, I wasn't hearing anything.
Okay, all right.
What's the wind to do with? Is it?
when she came to the UK, and then my father joined soon after. She became pregnant quite soon after that, and she had 4 children quite closely behind each other. So she did go out to work, and she did do factory work in between the pregnancies, but she did not have a career as such. She had work. And that's the same, I think, that was the same for a lot of Black women at that time. They didn't, apart from the people who came as nurses or who had maybe a few teachers, not many, but a few teachers and nurses, a lot of the women did factory work, which meant it could fit in between that you could work for a few months, and if you became pregnant, you might get another job in a factory. And in fact, that's what my mother did. And in the end, what she did was to take in piecework. And I remember coming home to seeing her sewing the buttons on the little cards, which was the kind of piecework that she did.
I'm fascinated by the fact, did they come as a couple to the UK, or did one come?
Oh, my mother came 6 months before my father. My uncle Gussie was the first one in our family who came, and then he sent for his little sister, and she came because we were already, there were 3 of us, myself and my 2 sisters, were born and living in Jamaica in that same house. And then my uncle Gussie sent for my mother, and then my mother sent for my father. So it was that way around, upending the usual dynamics. Yeah?
Well, it also reminds me of like there being a lot of trust, and there being a strategy, a process, and an agreement, and that discussion.
Yes, I think there was I don't think it was unique to my family. There was that. There were a lot of couples who had children in the Caribbean, and then one went, then they sent for the other, and then they sent for their children. There was a lot of that. But I also recognize there was a lot of that where people went to England and forgot about their children. I know, friends of mine, not so much in my family, but friends, maybe some family that yes, I think I can think of other people where that happened. They simply forgot about their children. There's a lot of harm that was done in those relationships. But certainly for my parents, I will say that I was grateful that what they did was to send for their children. They came, they had 4 boys, but they sent for their 3 girls. And then there were 7 of us in a house in Battersea. Until my little sister, the wash belly, you see the picture with me in the Panthers.
Okay, is that the next bit? So this was when you're coming to do this thing,
yes, that's my passport.
This is your passport photo.
Yes, yes.
How old were you here?
I was 9 going on 10. I was 9 when the picture was taken. So by the time I came to UK, I was 9, but I was approaching 10. So you can see it was probably the first time I went to Kingston, very fierce. Yes, and frightened.
Yes, I was going to ask you about the face.
Yes.
Very pensive. I love that photo.
Special clothes you had.
Yeah, this kind of has come in the wrong place, this picture.
Yes, this is way down. This is when I was in the Panthers.
Yeah.
Before that, this was my first teaching job, and the picture on the right of me with the cane row, that was on the front of The Teacher, which is a magazine for London schools and London teachers. They came to my school. There's a school in Brixton. I decided I wanted to teach in Brixton. I went to Teachers College in Cheshire. It was I think that was a time when you had teachers' colleges that were separate from university departments. They were part of the university, but they were separate institutions, because in that way, in those days, they had the idea there was a way in which you could mold teachers that was different from everybody else. So they had their own buildings and their own campuses. It was part of Keele University, but I was there in Osage. But when I came down to London, I decided I wanted to teach in Brixton. A number of reasons. One, my parents, I knew Brixton because my parents had lived there, so I knew it was a place that was comfortable for Black people. I also had my experience of schooling myself was, I can't say it was terrible, but I certainly did experience a certain amount of racism there. But I also had certainly one good teacher who guided my way out of my destructive. I was always fighting if I was called names, and she helped to keep me on a path so I could get my GC, what do you call them? Not what do you call them?
GCO levels.
GCO levels and A levels, and so on. Be the first in my school to get those kinds of qualifications. I wanted to stay in. I wanted to study literature, but in my day, I could not go to U.C.L. because I needed to have Latin in order to be able to do a literature degree. So you can see how these things work. Where is this little Black girl going to get Latin from to go to read literature? When I discovered people like James Baldwin, Richard Wright, and I really love literature. Even people like Jane Austen, I loved her wit. Thomas Hardy, I loved his sense of story. All of these things, I loved literature, but I couldn't do it because I didn't have Latin. So I went to Osage in Cheshire, where I could do literature as part of a teaching, of being an English teacher. And that's what I did. When I came back down to London, I seem to have segued away from your question.
I think I threw myself because the picture, I think there's a picture missing or something. So I was like, what's going on?
But it doesn't matter.
That's fine, it's okay.
Many of my school days, that's why. I have one which I didn't send to you.
Okay.
But this one is of my first job coming down from Cheshire, from Teachers College, finding myself in Brixton. And what I did was I just went into the divisional office and said to them I wanted to teach in Brixton. And they were so surprised because Brixton was a hardship placement. There were schools and classrooms just full of Black kids, and they thought they were giving trouble. So they're so pleased to have a young Black teacher saying that's what she wanted to do. So they directed me across the wall. Literally, the building you can see across the wall is a divisional office.
Right.
Where they hired teachers. And I was hired to teach in Santley School which was a class of about 45 of 10-year-olds. We would call them grade 6. I'm not sure, I can't remember what they're called in England right now. But it was the last year of the primary school. Mostly Black children. Some of them had come from Jamaica, there was Adi Foloronso, he'd come from Nigeria, the Cypriot boy, a couple of white kids, but most of them were Jamaicans, a couple of Barbadians. So it was a black class. Where I stayed for a few years.
Let me take you back a minute to your school when you were schooling, because you came at 9 and you went to school, and that school was Clapham. In Clapham.
It was Wickes Lane. It was off Clapham Common, yes. It was Wickes Lane. I went into the final year. Now, in the final year, that was a time still where we had the 11 plus, right? Now, I go into the school, I know, because you can imagine I was pretty kind of shell-shocked. I'd come to England in July, August. By the time I got to school, it was September. It was cold, let me tell you. So that was the first part of the shell shock. And then to come into this school, I remember we had two teachers. We had one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And I don't remember doing any kind of exam, but I must have done an 11 plus exam at that time. Now, can you imagine that child coming from Jamaica doing an 11 plus, an English exam to decide the rest of her life, right? Nowadays, the children who are going to do that kind of exam, you know, they start training for it from the age of 3 in a prep school, right?
Yeah. I know I've taught some of those 11 plus.
Right, right. So I know that certainly here, and when we used to have that exam, you choose a school for your child based on their exam results, really, if they're going to get them through the exam. So I was put in there. As I said, I don't even remember. Well, of course, I qualified, it seemed, for the secondary modern school, which was Lavender Hill School for Girls. It was what was called a secondary modern school. I was put into the C stream. That's the kind of middle stream. It was a mostly white school, white girls. It's a white working class school in Lavender Hill, you know, is
Battersea.
Battersea.
I know it very well.
Junction. At the time, in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, it was a white working class environment.
Yeah.
And so that's a school. So you can imagine, that's how and why I would experience this kind of name calling and so on. But as I've said before, the way I reacted that was to fight. I was always getting into fights and scrapes in the school. But what the teacher noted was that even though I was always fighting, I was always coming top of that C stream. And she went to the head teacher to ask her if she could move me up. And I think she did that for about 3 years until the head teacher relented, and in the 4th form I was moved up to this top stream, which really wasn't saying much because up to then the top stream, only one person in the top stream was doing any exams, was doing the GCE. I think we had to do there was another exam that was below GCE. I can't remember.
CSE.
And a lot of girls wouldn't even bother with that because those girls at the time saw themselves as white girls saw themselves as leaving school and getting married, and so on. But well, I knew that wasn't for me. And what happened was that when they put us in that top stream, they decided to put a few more of us in for the exam. So in my year, three of us did the GCE and passed and got some good grades. So they were over the moon. Now they're going to be a proper school because 3 girls were in the top stream. And so we were allowed to do A-levels. And in fact, some of the exams we did, we had to go to the boys' schools. We didn't do maths. We had to go to Spencer Park. I think it was Spencer Park in order to do the maths. So we had that level of gendered education in my lifetime that I've experienced.
Yeah, and it's at Lavender Hill that you met Olive Morris.
Yes. Olive was she was 2 years below me. The way I remember that is that I was, by the time I got to the 4th and 5th form, I was seen as now really kind of part of the establishment. I was allowed to become a monitor. So they had me policing the school gate. So I had to write in a book all the names of the people, the girls who were late. Olive was one of the people. She was one of those who were late. And so she went to do my book. But she didn't hold that against me because we wouldn't have been obvious friends because we're of the different ages. In the 5th form, you're not getting friendly with a 3rd former. But after we left school, we did continue to make contact. She and I, we were in the Black Arts Workshop, which is a West Indian student group, which met in the Earl's Court in the West Indian Student Centre. And we formed a group where we would engage with a lot of poetry, a lot of drama. And we went around to youth groups performing what you would now call slam poetry. Yes, Leroy Jones, Dutchman, and Song of Luino. A lot of poetry, a lot of dance, a lot of drama. And she was part of that group for a while. We continued, you know, we kept in touch with each other. We'd meet, well, we didn't have cell phones and that, but we checked each other from time to time. And it was one of the time when she checked me that she told me about her experience of being arrested in Brixton and harassed by the police. And that was when I just started to teach in Brixton. And that was one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reasons I thought, let me check out what the Panthers are actually about.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I think we're going to get to that. We're still in this education
phase, yes. That was a staff portrait. I don't know who took it, somebody just stepped it. That's most of the teachers in Stanley School. And you can see there was the head teacher, she was quite, I wouldn't say she was so great. What am I saying about her?
She was
yes.
liberal, white liberal.
Yes, liberal. Yes. Because she didn't directly employ us because we were employed through the divisional office, but we ended up with 3 Black teachers in the school, and she gave us a lot of freedom. This was before the days of the national curriculum. She gave us a lot of freedom to teach what we wanted to teach, develop our own curriculum according to the needs and concerns of the pupils. The only thing that was kind of sacrosanct was that we had to ensure that the children's reading ages continue to increase. So if I had a class of I had students in grade 6, they had to be at that reading age because, and this is something I certainly agreed with, and most of the teachers understood that you had to have the literacy rate had to be at a certain level, but the actual content that you use was really up to us, and how we got the children, how we engage with children, the methodology was up to us. And so we could develop our own schemes of work and plans. And we did that together. The people worked in the same grade, we would work together on the same plans. And that allowed us to do some really exciting things. That's where I developed what I call my, what is now called a
decolonizing the curriculum, because what did you do? For example, what sorts of things did you do with your students?
Yes, well, the things that I did, I won't talk about what everybody else did. Some of the topics, we had a lot of, we certainly had a lot of African, South African, West African stories and folk tales that we used for art and drama. Yes, we had topics coming out of the Caribbean based on the lives of Jamaicans like Marcus Garvey, Nanny and the Maroons. Rastafarianism was just being understood, so we introduced that to the students. A lot of the children actually came from Jamaica, so they could give us ideas about some of the things that they wanted. So if you're developing little booklets about the flora and fauna of what was going on in Brockwell Park in Brixton, you could also do that about what they had experienced coming from Clarendon in Jamaica and so on. So there are lots of different ways in which we infuse the culture of the students, the artifacts that the students were familiar with coming from the Caribbean, but we also introduced them to what was happening in the world. So we would talk about Mandela or those freedom fighters in Southwest Africa or West Africa, in Guinea-Bissau and all those places. So we had all of that, history, nature, politics, literature, all of that was part of the
Which is interesting, because coming from it the other way, say like in the generations that were in Jamaica, say like your mother, maybe like, well, certainly my mother, she would have had this the colonialism, the colonialist, she would have understood the fauna so-called of the UK. She would have understood about snow, and she would have understood about all of that been in her psyche. So even now, my mum, who's 89, she can recite some of these English poems and places that she can't even imagine. She's never been to Scotland, but she'll recite poems that give you that idea about the Scottish landscape. So it's quite interesting that you're saying that you were doing it for students here who are then understanding about nature in, say, like Jamaica, as well as people of those places.
Yes, and the curriculum, it was a few years before it changed, even in Jamaica. Yeah, certainly. So yeah, that's what she would have got. That's what I would have gotten. But I just thought, and as I've written other places, I just thought they needed a curriculum that would make them kind of proud of themselves and recognize where they're coming from, that where they're coming from was something worthy of being in the classroom and should be part of the classroom. So that's why you decorate the classroom with all of these things from our history and from our background. And I have to say, as I said, some of it was political. As I recorded somewhere, I did have a picture of Angela Davis in my classroom.
Why not?
was because it was an image that you wanted the students to have, and I didn't want them to think I was the only one who wore an afro, because you can see there at a big afro, and the students, I think when they first saw me, they were taken aback.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But by the time I'd spent time with them and we'd looked at African culture and looked at how cane row was done, and I showed them, we'd demonstrated, because I could do cane row, we'd have cane rowing sessions. And in fact, some of the students, their parents could do cane row. And there was one, Elaine Beckford, who used to do my hair as a demonstration. This is after school, by the way, not in school time. We're in the library, and we'd be reading stories and have these cane row hair plaiting sessions to show them that, this was part of our culture.
So part of the decolonizing then is also extracurricular at times, right?
Oh yeah, yes. I was, for 2 years, I was in charge of the library, so that gave me reign to order whatever I could get from anywhere in the world, from America, from Africa, from anywhere. And to just fill up the library, and we'd read stories afterwards,
I mean, now that sounds like just like almost like a dream teacher role, but like, because now there is just like my niece who is teaching, so many teachers just trying to get out, because like that's
why I left. That's one of the reasons why I left. By the time I got to the early 90s, all they were concerned, and I was teaching older children I was at Brixton College, and what they wanted you to do was to, and I still try to do some of that work, because they were talking about social and life skills, and you can use any content. But when they started insisting that every single thing you did had to have a particular skill notation and a skill label, and you had to fill up so many forms to indicate the level of skill that this particular student had reached, I just thought, to help, this is not right. This kind of managerialism that they brought into some very minute vocational skills. I thought it was totally inappropriate because I knew that the people were responsible for setting out this kind of curricula, the people were responsible for organizing the schools in these ways. Their children did not go to those kinds of processes. Their children had a good, very good, decent, liberal education, right?
Yeah.
But they wanted our children. So I did put up a certain amount of, but after a while, that was one of the reasons, not the only reason, that I didn't want to be part of Margaret Thatcher's destruction of education.
Yeah, and it really, to me, it certainly has been, you know, destroyed, in lots of different ways, and it's very, very heavily policed, I would say, and managed and controlled, and dumbed down, so that, you know,
that was it. That was it more than anything. It's that kind of miseducation that comes from dumbing down and not believing that Black children were capable of high levels of achievement and of achieving excellence, you know, and doing really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's okay for their children. Let them have it.
Absolutely, I understand that. So fast forwarding, go back and forward to this period where you are going to then reconnect with Olive Morris. What was what was that like, and then what were you gonna? How much of an impact?
What was it like? I mean, I don't want to overstate. I mean, Olive and I were friends, and she told me about the Panthers. I think I would have known from other people, because people like Neil Kenlock. Neil Kenlock was a friend of mine. There's a group of us in South London who were friends. So I think we could have all have gone into it, but I think I was galvanized by Olive's experience to join. And I found that what I liked about it was the fact that it was a lot of young people of my age, quite a few a little younger, like Olive's age, yes? Because I was 21 when I joined. Olive would have been 18, 19. People like Neil, 19, 20. I was talking to a friend of mine, Hurley, who I met was on the phone for hours last week. He joined when he was 16. So it was young people, yes? And what was the main concern? One was the behavior of the police on the street. That was very important, especially with a lot of young Black men who were being harassed on the street. Harassed continually, daily, couldn't go out. There was also the treatment in schools. Now, my school was just ordinary racism that existed there, but Bernard Cord came when a few months into my school, so the Panthers, and told us about his research, what was happening to some other children who were being shunted into ESN schools because they came into the country, perhaps they weren't fitting in so easily, communication issues, culture shock issues, and they were being diagnosed and tested and put into special schools. So there's that kind of issue. There's also recognition of what was happening in the world, what was happening with the Black Panthers in America, and the work that they were doing to raise up Black communities there. There was what was happening in Southern Africa with the liberation movements, in Southeast Asia, all over the world. There was a kind of ferment at that time that we felt that we could play some part in, because especially if we dealt with what was happening in our backyard, dealing with racism in schools, on the streets, in the courts, and recognizing that we had a part to play. And Olive was a part of that. She was a very important part of that. What you notice about Olive is that I should say about her, she was very fierce. I suppose people say that she was like a tomboy, but what she was that she would take you on if you said something to her that she didn't think was right or was fair, she was quite sure that she could make you see the error of the
your
word.
ways.
She was very strong, and
Yeah.
I really liked about it. That's why she was a friend, I would say. Yeah.
This is really.
And she was a leader in the spot in terms of helping people, because that was another big issue. People didn't have anywhere to live. You know, you live in your parents' home, but often you're living on top of each other, right? Into your 20s. There's nowhere to rent. Jobs are hard to come by, and there's very few places to rent. There was still racism there, that what in the 50s they called the color bar, in the 60s color bar. But that was still because we did not own enough houses in order to be able to rent to each other. So what you had was a lot of empty houses left empty by the council. They'd built these houses after the war, or they had acquired them after the war. But in a lot of cases, they were being left empty. How could that be? And she was really a leading person in that movement in Brixton and South London to get people into empty houses.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I haven't really followed up what has really become of that movement that would, you know, she kind of initiated there. But I know there are different organizations that obviously still memorialize her, but they have got rid of, you know, the Olive Morris House, or, you know, they've kind of
Yes, women. Oh, you mean the place that in the
that was a council. They've got rid of that. It was Olive Morris House, and they've redone it something with
the people, as I say about a lot of things, the owner come for the yard.
Yeah, we are lodgers.
And what we have to do, we weren't looking at the time. What they did with squatting, I think, is that they kind of bought us some of those houses and turned them into housing associations. I think that's one way in which that kind of dampened the squatters movement, is that you don't notice that in that period of the squatters movement, a lot of housing associations were formed.
Erupted. Coming out of the ground. So here is now at this point, what's going on here? Is this is you, this one, right?
Yes. Can I just say on the left, that's much earlier. On the left, that's about 1972. That's on the steps of Shakespeare Road. It would have been a Saturday, because we had the Saturday school.
The Saturday school, yes.
And I was running that. That's me with my little sister, and I always have to give her a name, Joanne. She's so.
Oh.
Yes. I'm always.
Of course, you're one of the oldest. I forget. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's my mother's wash belly. I'm the oldest, and she's the youngest.
Yeah, like me. That's what I must be called then. The wash belly, the last throw.
Yeah, they're not wash belly. She came. She used to come to Saturday school with me, and at Saturday school we used to go and pick up the children. Quite often, I'd take children. I used to teach during the week. They would come to Saturday school as well. Because the parents trusted you to, they know that you're not, that you're looking after their children, and they're probably glad to get them out of the house. So that's on the left, my left anyway. Yeah. On the right, you were saying you wanted to talk about that picture.
So this one is you, and are these other
okay, some of them.
I always think this is Althea Laquan, but it's not, right?
No, it's not. That's Judith. That's Judith. No, Althea was not in the women's group.
Right, okay. So this is Black women's group.
Oh, this is Brixton Black Women's Group. You can see Gail Lewis at the front. That one. Can you see Gail? No, in the green shirt. I think she's worked at U.C.L, has she?
I don't actually work at U.C.L. And Tony doesn't really work at U.C.L, so we wouldn't.
Okay, all right. And Gerlin Bean, I have to acknowledge Gerlin there, the white headscarf.
At the back, or this one?
That's the front. Yes, in the middle. That's Gerlin Bean. Yeah, she was a founder member. and she's
Are they, how are these, are you still in communication with any
with some of them, I have to say the several people there have died. Sylvie Enrique, who we dedicated Heart of the Race, one of the people we dedicated Heart of the Race to, the original, is there looking down. She died. And next to her in the red is Clover, who died here. She was murdered in Jamaica.
Oh.
Those are two people who are no longer with us.
Oh, rest in peace.
But all the others.
Yeah, it's a lovely iconic photo though, isn't it?
Yes, that was at the time of the OWAD conference. I think it was just before or just after. The first one in 1979. It might have been before, because Olive was in hospital that time because she died July. She died, she died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
When she was in hospital, when I went to visit her in hospital, she was talking and planning about what we were going to do at the OWAD conference. So she was really engaged right up at the end. But that picture is of us somewhere, I think it was in the country, went on a retreat.
Okay. That was the other thing I always want to ask, and I kind of vaguely remember to do that, about the organizing, the politicizing, the conscientizing, the regular work, the extracurricular work. I mean, on Sunday, when did you do stuff that was regular stuff, like, or was just that's it? There's the personal and political.
It was really hard. But I think I'm only speaking personally to say that one thing, I think you have to have supportive partners and husbands or partners who are feminists also, right? If you're working in and either supporting you or in there with you, the partners have got to support the work there that you're doing, or be part of that work also, because it did take up all of the time. I mean, we met on Sunday. That was just the main meeting time, not the times in the week when we would meet, but the main kind of organizing meeting where it's people bring back their reports and decide what we're going to do for the week was on Sunday. And, after that, my partner, he would take me to his mother's house, my mother-in-law, and that's where I would eat.
Because you
because I didn't cook.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Food would be made somehow.
But he could cook. He can cook as well. So he was a very good cook. So either one of us could cook. But by the time, I think it became really more difficult when we had children. Yes. And when you had children and you had to be running from, going to school or even earlier. I mean, when they were really young, that's one of the reasons I started working at Brixton College, and we organized a creche in order, I could say I had a selfish reason for organizing a creche at Brixton College, where I had somewhere to leave my eldest son. Both my children went to that creche, in fact. It was organized for staff and students. 20 places, 15 for students and five for staff, and we ran it. So you had to find ways of bringing your organizing into your private life. If I wasn't so involved in that kind of organizing, I would probably be hunting around to find a childminder or a nanny or something like that, because you couldn't get any. Childcare was so difficult. Because you have the mindset of an organizer, that's what you do. You say, let me find a way so I can continue to work with a 5 or 6 month old child.
Okay, so this is one of your pamphlets, yeah, which people can.
Newsletters, please.
Say that again. Newsletters, yes. Which are now archived at the Black Cultural Archives. People
Yes, I
want to
think
go.
so.
They want to go there. So yeah. So this is what was involved in. What did you do here with these? Were you part of? Who produced them? Who helped produce them? Was this
We all produced them.
you all produced it?
Everything was done collectively.
Mhm.
We would decide on what's going to be in the issue, and then we decide who was going to write it. We didn't use our own names on it. The only way I can recognize which articles I wrote, because I know my own voice, even though my name isn't on it. But we would write them, edit them, and then they had to go to, there's somewhere in North London they used to go, I can't remember, but that's how it was. There was no computer software to use. It was all done the old-fashioned way, typesetting and whatever. But the way it was written, we decided collectively what was going to be in it. And then we farmed out who was going to write what, who was interested in what. Maybe somebody was involved in this campaign and they could write about it best. We had people who were poets and they would want to contribute a poem, or somebody went to see a play or read a book, you know, and they would contribute the review. People were ready to do that. People, it wasn't
It was seamless. It was kind of relatively seamless. It wasn't like a contested moment.
No. Let me see. You mean contested in a kind of antagonistic way?
Yeah, because obviously when you're talking about collectivism, which is like a major principle of organizing, you have to deal with a bit of the individualism and egoism bit that's there. But you're talking about, from what I'm hearing, is that you're grounded in the collectivist principle.
Yeah, because we wanted to make it work. Certainly people like me had been in the Panthers and other organizations where there was more infighting and more ego on display. But in the women's group, we really wanted to make it work. And some of the women there, like Gerlin, she had come from that kind of background, and we were just really glad that, you know, it's the first time black women are working together, just us. So the immediate thing is not to, of course there were fights. I remember when in fact, I think it was in that issue, it took us months to work out that editorial on Black feminism.
Oh, that feels like a whole nother
Well, don't ask me too much about it now.
That's what I'm saying. It feels like a whole nother session.
Yes. But
yeah.
But there wasn't terrible fights, but there was a lot of discussion.
Of course, it's
yeah. What we really wanted to be was to support each other, really. Support each other.
This is really just quick whiz through to show you, as I did before, that as part of our teaching, when we do the Black Women Resistance course, this is what features in there, that self and, you know, Olive Morris, Sister Olive Morris, and so you feature in there. So I go through these slides really quickly so that the students are aware, and I talk about the collapse and then the reorganization of the group. And I love some of your positions. I remember this one forming. This was actually
okay.
Where you mentioned about Beyonce here and the celebrity.
I don't know, there might be some Beyonce.
Yeah, it was talking about how, you know, some people, because of the celebrity status, they become the voice of the particular politics or whatever. And really, you're saying it's not just a 1 minute, you know, kind of.
No, it's about the work, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Long term.
Yeah, I mean, yourself and, you know, obviously Sister Stella, Dadsy, and Sister Susan as well. Just the Uncle Eric, you know, people that I respect and admire so much, because it has been a lifelong commitment to thing, you know, and grounded. It's not like this is here about being famous or being whatever, but we could have another conversation about where it is at the moment and how, you know, how that movement has turned into with a different emphasis. But anyway, this is now your publication.
My sisters.
Yeah, I love this photo.
I love it too. I love it too.
And this was, do you three actually get to communicate still?
Of course, we have a WhatsApp group for the three of us.
Oh, that is amazing.
You don't know what we're saying there.
I can imagine. No, the only one we haven't actually spoken with is actually Sister Suzanne. I sometimes randomly bump into
yeah, she's not, you know, none of us are on any social media at all.
I know. It's great. It's great. You've done the work that is a lasting testimony of that effort, and it's been, you know, it's for us and others in generations after to really understanding and try to keep it going, really. And this is what you then did late. This is what this image is, because this was when was this taken?
That was taken, I think it was, let me see, it's either 2018 or I think it's 2018 when we were,
I think so, yeah.
We were at the Tate Modern, and there was a study group of Heart of the Race, and we went in there to see what they were doing. Either 2018 or 2019. And this
it was definitely 2018, I think. And this was, yes.
That was 2018 as well.
Yeah, this was New Beacon Books, and obviously I was interviewing or speaking with you.
Yes, this was when that was a publicity.
Yeah.
Let me just say the thing about social media, it's not because I'm against it, but I think it has its purposes for certain things. I think it's very good for organizing, if you want to pull people together very quickly. But to have a kind of serious discussion, I think, you know, a tweet can't, well, maybe it's just me, I can't think to say something so profound in the number of words.
140 characters.
I don't think so, but I think social media is good for organizing. I do. I would really encourage people.
Yeah, effective mobilizing, certainly.
Yes, we didn't have that. We had to go and give out leaflets. Oh, I would have loved to have Twitter.
I know.
Old with 100 leaflets you're giving out.
I mean, because relatively, even in my generation of trying to being part of the All African People's Revolutionary Party for a stint that I was there, is the same. We still had to go and try and do leafleting and try and, you know, certainly get into the students societies and things like that. It's not easy, but social media should enable it in some ways. But it has its ups and it has its
downs. You have that you have the social media for the first round, and then you go in with the leaflets.
You got to go in. The
engagement.
Yeah. I mean, because like even with this this session that we're doing, like Tony had said, there were about just under 1,000 people who were able to access that this is going to be on. So, and they're, I mean, actually, we can ask people to put in the chat. You can take this opportunity to put in the chat where you're actually zooming from. So afterwards, we can really see the reach that this enabled us, obviously, because of the pandemic as well. But thanks to the fact that Tony Warner or Black History Walks has that social media following as well. So they'll have a big Twitter account, they'll have a big YouTube. And so you're able to, do you see what I mean? You're able, it's interesting, you're able to gather people. Not everybody turns up who books, by the way, because it's like a free event. However, they will then see the recording of it, and then you don't know where it then goes. And of course, in this case, it's going to be a record for posterity, which is what I'm particularly pleased about as well.
Yes, you're getting a worldwide pickup, I'm seeing.
You are. You are. There was somebody that messaged in that they were from India. I don't know if you know them. They said they were zooming in from India. So you'll get, it's just everywhere. Whereas if we were present and I don't know where the space is that we would be able to get 1,000 people in sometimes, if you see what I mean. This is Sister Althea Laquant. Do you remember that day when she just happened to be?
Yes, yes.
Her and brother Eddie behind her happened to be passing. This was another wonderful, certainly in my experience, moment, which is why I'm looking on like that, going, wow. Yeah. And this was what you were talking about, right?
Yes, they had a study group at the Tate Modern, and what I think I've said this before. What I liked about it was not only were they studying the book, which I think, and that's what we also did when we were in the Panthers. There was a lot of we had to study.
Work study.
We had to read some hard books. You can imagine this 16, 17-year-old reading Fanon and Marx and C.L.R. James.
Yeah.
People they would normally read, but the discipline of that, you need that kind of discipline of mind before you can actually go out on the streets and participate in say a demonstration. So I think studying is an important part of any political group. But even though it was just a group of people came to study, they also came talking about campaigns that were going on locally, like the one I remember is related to the situation with knife crime in the UK at the time. So I think it's important not just to study, but always linking it to what's happening on the ground, what's happening in the community, and what you can do, or what one can do as a group, or as small groups, or as caucuses, in order to make a difference. So I really like that. I felt heartened that the heart of the race has been put to good use.
Yeah, and continuing. So that's really good. All right, yeah, this is your, do you see what I did with this beautiful design jacket that you have on there? That was the motif that I did.
My Chinese when I was being former. This I'm amazed at this picture, you know, a young technician had to do a report and say, quick, take a picture. He did very well.
He did, it's stunning. So you were at, which department were you in?
I was head of education, because I've always been in teaching. I came back to Jamaica in '92. You want a bit of background how I became, the last thing you heard, I was in the Panthers and at school in Brixton. I came back, I taught at University of Greenwich for a while in the teacher training department. And then we decided to relocate to Jamaica in '92 for a number of reasons. One of them, I said, was because for me, the teaching, I didn't like the kind of teaching I was doing, and I was responsible for that vocational rubbish that Thatcher had brought in. Another thing is I had 2 sons, and I didn't really want them to, especially what I knew about what happens to Black boys on the street, I didn't want them to grow up, you know, with that kind of shadow. And I also felt that the education, there was almost as though there was 2 kind of lanes that they had laid out for Black boys. Either you conformed in a particular way and became a kind of, there's some names for it that I've forgotten. It became what they saw as white, right? When you became conformist. Or else you were this kind of chasing around like a blue bottle with this kind of thug image. I don't know if it still obtains in the same way in the UK, but when I looked at what was happening to young black boys, I didn't like what was mapped out and how much I could control it. And also, I really wanted to be a place where they could see a lot of other Black people would actually achieved, right? And I thought that let me go back. Let me see what Jamaica has to offer. And I was recruited. University of West Indies, I saw an advert in the Guardian, and I said, let me go for it. At first, my husband wasn't so sure, but we left. Our sons were 12 and 8, and we put them in school here. They're back in the UK now, but they unfortunately with COVID they can't come back right now. So let me go back to, you were asking me about where I was working. I was working in education, so I became a lecturer in education. Please just give me a minute.
Yeah, you're getting your charger, because I heard the sound.
You heard the sound?
I heard that sound. I thought it was mine for a minute.
No, it was mine. I had it in. So I came and worked in the Department of Education. As I say, I love literature, but I also have a background in literacy, and I realized that literacy was what was needed if I was to work in Jamaica. So I really started doing a lot of work, not just in literature. I put that to one side, but really in language and literacy. And that's why I did that research on, for instance, on Jamaican Creole. I started it in the UK because I'd worked with adult learners, and that was an issue. So I did some research for my master's in for adult learners who have Jamaican Creole as their first language. So I continued that work. That just went very nicely with what I started to do in research I started to do in Jamaica. And really how you move children who start with Jamaican Creole as their first language, how you move them to English literacy, English literacy in school. So that was the research I did. I went on to do policy work with the Ministry of Education in Jamaica and across the region. And that led me to, and because it's across the region, it's one university, but it's across the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So I was meeting with people in St. Vincent and Grenada and saying, oh, what are we gonna do? We want you to do this, want you to do that. I said, I can't do it. To get the, you know, the management should do it. And they looked at me and said, but you are the management.
You can decide.
Okay. Okay, so that's what led to we put together a degree in literacy. First one we did was in literacy online, and that was in 2006. And from there we did one in language and literature, and really we put a whole program online, which now that we're in COVID is probably a very good thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So
that's brilliant.
That's why I'm glad I became head of department, even though I withstood the responsibility for a long time. It helped me to do that kind of work.
But now, of course, you are.
Okay, I'm in that same space right now. Sometimes you might see a leaf come across because I'm on a veranda. I have a lot of plants inside and outside. So some across the computer. Yeah, that's where I am now.
That's where you are now. Okay. Well, I wanted to just show you a snap from the Dr. Erna Brodber. Look at her there. She's
amazing. She's my role model, my mentor. Because I want to do some of the work. What she did for her place in Pear Grove, I want to do it for Fairy Hill, Portland. But with the COVID, I haven't really focused on that. But she's given me a lot of, the kind of research methodology for doing family history research.
Yeah. That's great. So just for those who aren't, who might not be aware of that. So now this is your latest project. Just tell us about that. So that is your latest project.
Okay, well,
Kind of
let me say, as I said, that's what I want to do. I want to cover 200 in my district in Portland. We have Blue Hole, people call it Blue Lagoon, Blue Hole, Ferry Hill, Blue Hole, Zion Hill, Ferry Hill, Boston, Priestman's River. These are like little districts and they're only about 5 miles. And generations of people have lived in and stayed in those little districts. And my family is one that has been in one of those districts, between Ferry Hill and Zion Hill. Remember the house at the beginning?
Yes.
That's in Zion Hill. I was born a mile up the road in Ferry Hill. Don't mind the
Yes,
park.
okay, it's all right. I'm enjoying it.
Yes, so that's 5 miles, and there's 200 years of history that I could write. I haven't written it yet. All I've done so far is traced my family on both sides back over 200 years, mainly my father, grandfather, on both sides, and realizing they even connect over the 200 years. So my earliest piece of evidence is the baptism record of my great whatever grandfather going back to 1818. That's 200 years, right?
Wow. Yeah.
That he was baptized because they were required to baptize them. I can see the record also of the Mr. Betts who owned them. He had to present every year, annually, they had to present how many cows they owned, how many goats, and how many slaves. And those records I have. But that's just the bare bones. I need to do all of the context. I saw a program, it's the Underground Railroad, and that kind of inspired me again to say, you know what? American history is they have so much. And we need to, in the Caribbean, we need to bring out, not popularize, but bring to the forefront a lot of
highlight.
Yes, and that's what Erna Brodber has done and is doing. And I really want to, as I say, she's my, do I call her my mentor?
Yes, she is your mentor. She's my mentor, as you are as well. So yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, about 2 months ago, I just phoned her up and said, Erna, we call her Lixie, right? Lixie, I'm trying to get all of these methodological pieces together. Can you help me? And we just spent about an hour on the phone and gave me all the references. I still have the references, but I haven't taken them up. Because, and I'll tell you, to cover myself, what I have done recently, what I was working on was a little piece of history, which I think I'm going to, when it comes out, I'll let you know where you can access it.
Okay,
it's
great.
What I call a brief history of the Black British Civil Rights Movement, a brief history of the key issues and moments. And what I did was, it was a paper I did for a group in Leicester, Serendipity. I don't know if you know it. I was on Windrush Day, and they wanted me to do a talk about me and the Panthers. I said, you know what, let's broaden it out and let's look at what we've been doing in the UK over the last 100 years. I'm not saying it all started in 1919 with the riots in the seaports and in the towns of the UK, but I used it as a starting point. It was a significant starting point. And what I did was to trace the movements and organization and the issues that the Black community has had to deal with, has had to really organize and mobilize around over the last 100 years. That's what I've been doing. So
sounds fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and I should look forward to that when it comes out, when we can access it.
Well, I did the proofing on it over the weekend, that I told you, so it should come out soon. I think I think it could be a book, or it could be a film, a documentary. It could be
Yes.
more. I always think, oh, let's do a book, and this person does this chapter, this person does chapter. In fact, I talked to Suzanne and Stella about it, but what we said in the end, there are lots of people out there, like people on this talk, who can do some more of that stuff.
Brilliant. I love that segue, and I think that's it.
Make it a film. Yes, somebody said make it a film. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you. This is me. I just don't even know. I want to thank everybody who's managed to come on to this second installment, Beyond the Black Panthers, with Dr. Beverley Bryan. Sister Beverley Bryan, I thank you so much for what has been, again, another really wonderful conversation with you, just as the one that I also had with Sister Erna Brodber some months ago. And so you continue to inspire generations, including myself. I kind of always feel like, how am I, there's so many things that when you say it triggers my own memory, and I'm thinking to myself, but like, I mean, I guess we're like, it's not that far removed, or the same things keep reverberating in life. But yeah, I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and we'll stop now. And what will happen, you'll see the comments as well.
Okay.
And Tony will come back on, and then we'll have some questions after.
Okay, for sure. I think I have a feeling I might have gone on too long. If people want to ask questions, they can.
No. You haven't gone on too long at
I'm
all.
quite okay.
No.
I don't have my exercise session for a couple of hours. So.
Oh, nice. Tony, over to you. Thank you.
All right, you just need to stop sharing before we can get to the Q&A. I've got to tell you what's coming up from U.C.L. and Black History Walks in the next couple of weeks or so. So this event is brought to you because of U.C.L. Sarah Parker Remond Centre and Black History Walks. And this is what's coming up shortly from Black History Walks and also from U.C.L. too. Thing I got mentioned to the audience is this book, because we were just hearing about Black British civil rights, but now you can study Black British civil rights at GCSE level. So in schools right now is this book, which is based on Notting Hill Black History Walk, and it covers from the 1940 up to 1971. So we're looking at Windrush, the Notting Hill riots of 1958, the Mangrove, Claudia Jones. It's all in this one book. So now kids in schools for the first time can actually study a huge swathe of Black British civil rights in London from 48 to 70, 71, 72, etc. And it's the first time it's ever been done. And also it's the first time that you've had a school history textbook based on a Black History Walk. That's the front cover. This is a section. Me and some other guys.
Okay, well done.
There's three or, well, two. There's a teacher, myself, and then a series editor. But this is an extract from the book here. You can see it's about the mangrove, and we have Frank Crichton, Darker Side within the book. We've used a lot of rare, or at least I suppose not well known to the mainstream archives. So we've got people like Baron Baker, Claudia Jones. We've got newspapers that the mainstream would not know anything about. So we basically used our Black history knowledge from the last 15, 20 years of doing this sort of work and put it into this school textbook, which is now available across the country. And here's another example. We got clips from the West India Gazette. We got interviews with ex-RAF bomber pilots who were active in the Notting Hill area in the 1950s. So it's a very unusual book, but now it's available in schools at GCSE level for study, and it's there for the next 10, 20 years or so. And that's from a group called Pearson, which is one of the biggest publishers in the world. And that's the walk that the history is based on. So if you want to find out what the book is about, you can come to the walk, or you can actually get the book and read about the walk within the book, because the book actually has a lot more references in the book than you get on a walk. Okay. Other than that, we have a whole bunch of events coming up. So we mentioned teaching several times. One of the first Black head teachers, a woman called Beryl Gilroy. She wrote a revolutionary book called Black Teacher, and that book will now be discussed by her daughter, who's actually the dean of a university in central London. So her daughter will discuss the book, how it came to be, and the legacy of that book. That's the 15th of September. And then you have several other, in fact, we have about 17 events which you can access online. So all you got to do is go to the website, blackhistorywalks.co.uk, or go to the Eventbrite page, which is also Black History Walks, Eventbrite, etc., and just click on whichever event you want to come to. And the online lectures are mostly free. So like this one, this is a free event. You can access these lectures, which are quite diverse and eclectic, cover a whole bunch of different topics, from theatre to sterilization to teaching. There's lots of stuff to choose from. And one of the most, the most popular ones is 20th September. I fought the law and I won with Peter Herbert. So this is a Black judge who actually sued the judiciary and won, in effect. He actually challenged them and won his case, more or less. So he's going to talk about how he did that. He's also the chair of the Society of Black Lawyers, which is a very interesting part of his history as well. So that has about 900 people booked so far. We can go up to 1,000. So if you want to come to that one, make sure you book your ticket now. Then, of course, you got the Black History River Cruise. You also have Layla Hassan. Oh, I should mention her. Layla Hassan Howe was the partner of Darcus Howe. Darcus Howe was passed on, but Layla Hassan Howe herself will be speaking about her Black activism back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And later on, she was speaking about Darcus Howe. So there's going to be a whole series of events looking at British Black Power movement in the 70s. We're going to hear from Layla Hassan Howe herself, and also we're going to review Darcus Howe's legacy by looking at his work and showing some of his films at the BFI South Bank. So if you hear at the beginning of the event, we showed the trailer for the BFI South Bank African Odysseys program. We show Black films, African films, Caribbean films there at that venue once a month, each month for the last 15 years. It's the only such program in the entire country. So if you're in London, come to it, check out the films, check out the lectures, check out the talks, etc., because they're quite rare, quite unique, and very informative. Also, keeping out for our book from Black History Walks, we've actually written a book which looks at 2.5-hour walks put into a book form. So it's got 400 images, 25 maps, and we basically give people the Black history in certain parts of London in text form, and that's coming out fairly soon. I mentioned that we do films. So the bottom right corner, that is the cinema we show films in. It's called the BFI South Bank in Waterloo. And we show films down there once a month. And these are the types of films we show once a month for the last 15 years. Films that you would not normally see in your Cineworld, Odeon, View, etc. For some reason, they don't get put on those cinemas, but we put them on. We also put on a Q&A after the film, and sometimes a workshop, sometimes a talk to go with the film as well. So each month of the year, the last 15 years, you have this resource to access rare, unusual, and very interesting African Caribbean history. Coming up shortly, you have all these films. Got films aimed at the elder or older community. We have films looking at people who want to talk about comedy and how Black history is used in comedy. We got the sequel to The Harder They Come, a film called No Place Like Home, starring Grace Jones. A lot of people don't know they actually made a sequel to Harder They Come, but that is it there. And also we have several films with Darcus Howe either presenting or producing, and we're looking at his contribution to media over the last 4 years or so. So that's taking place in November, but as I said, every month of the year we're doing something to do with African Caribbean film at the BFI South Bank. And as far as previous lectures are concerned, we have recorded most of them for the U.C.L. SPRC partnership, and you can find them here on the youtube.com/Black History Walks channel. So there's about 200 plus talks or lectures or film clips there, covering a whole variety of topics and subjects. So you can just go to that website, and this lecture with Professor Beverley Bryan, will be online in about 4 days or so. So if you're interested in watching this back or telling a friend about it, if you check back on this website a couple of days' time, you should see the lecture there at the top left-hand corner. And this is just a bit about change, because the reason we have the Sarah Parker Remond Centre is because students protested, demanded, and cajoled and lobbied for change at the university. And because of that lobbying and protesting from the students, the Sarah Parker Remond Centre was set up. It's kind of straightforward that their activism led to physical change. So SPRC is headed by a young man called Professor Paul Gilroy, who's a bit of a legend when it comes to Black issues and history and analyzing racism. Those are some of his books right there. He's the head of the SPRC, and he's kind of organizing a massive amount of research and talks on racism, racialization, imperialism, etc. And the website is full of interesting information, so check that out too. At this point, I'm going to hand back to our guest, our special guest, Dr. Michelle Asantwa, and her special guest, Professor Beverley Bryan.
Great, thanks, Tony. Wow, that looks all so amazing, doesn't it, Sister Beverley?
Yes,
And yeah, I mean, Tony's been quite, you know, obviously quite modest, but big congratulations for the book that's gonna, the Pearson book that you contributed to. That is phenomenal, especially right now. We really need that. And obviously for the book that's coming out. We had lots of comments, Sister Beverley, I don't know whether you were able to see some of them and scroll through, where a lot of people are coming from. We've got from Carolina, we've got Washington, DC, we've got Texas. I can't seem to see any from the Caribbean generally. There is one, the last one is from Uganda. Some of them are your students, I believe.
Yes, I saw Sanho.
Yes, which is great.
I remember her.
And there's Diksha from India. Yeah, a lot from Canada.
She's still there.
She's still there. She said hi. Yes. The 429 project. I don't know what your name is, but you're from you're from Jamaica. So there was a question in the Q&A bit, which is from Camille, who was asking what year were you on the cover of The Teacher? What year was that roughly?
Oh, I think that's probably 1970 or 71. About 71.
Yeah.
Long time. 15 years.
But that 1971, so that was the year as well. It's interesting because that was the year of the Bernard Cord book, wasn't it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. All of those things. The year I went in, started teaching, the book came out. Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of things are happening at that time.
Yeah, and were you, I think I asked you this the last time, but were you working with or using the bookshops that were available? What contacts did you have with any of the bookshops?
There wasn't any bookshop apart from, there's Bogle Overture in West London and New Beacon in North. That's all there was. We set up the third one, which was Sabah Books, but that was until 1973.
Right.
Yes, that was from a property, the Olive Scotty, that we moved into. And then slowly it took us it started off as just a few books. Especially we wanted to get some good books for children or books that we were studying. I remember Pathfinder Press we used to have books from there, Malcolm X's speeches and so on. Yeah, but there weren't many bookshops at all.
Okay, yeah. So where are those books still in print? Are they? I don't know whether the question, this is the 429 project. Are you asking about Heart of the Race or are you asking about the other book? Because Heart of the Race is still.
Who are you talking to?
There's a 429 project. I don't know what their name is, but they're asking where can we find your book, Dr. Beverley? And
which book?
That's what I was asking them to say, which book.
I've written a lot of books.
If it's Heart of the Race, then that's available online. Is it Verso?
Verso, that's in print now.
That's still in print.
If it's My Education Between Two Grammars, that's published here with Ian Randall Publications.
Okay.
But these are available on Amazon.
Right, yeah. Okay, that answers the question and some others that were up there as well. Yes, this will be recorded, as Tony said. If time, red tape, and money. Hold on, look, there's a question here. Thank you, Dr. Beverley. You've achieved so much. So this is from Beck. She says, thank you, Dr. Beverley. You've achieved so much already. If time, red tape, and money was no issue, okay, what project would you have liked to take on?
looking to give me some work. Well, I'm glad you said about the red tape, because, you know, if this is somebody who's been in education or academic life, they know that proposal writing is like. No, so if there wasn't, there's things that I'm interested in that I'm doing now. I think it would be my family history project. I'd like to have a research assistant. That's probably what I would have, a research assistant, which I would have had if I was still at the university, to help me with that, I think. Because the rest of it I can do myself.
Mm.
There's some,
Yeah.
you know what research assistants do.
Yeah. I mean, and all of that is still possible. And, you know, even if you were here, obviously we have such a thing as obviously the AHRC, the Arts Council.
Yes.
Which would be great if you could have had that, because here, for example, the AHRC would give you, or you could apply for grants that would enable you to extend your research.
No, but the last project I was involved with, Suzanne, we did some work on, and the article I did on the Black community, that one that I did last year, it was through the AH, but they require you to be attached to a university, and I'm retired.
Right. Yes.
I'm retired.
Of course, because they don't recognize independent scholars like themselves now.
I don't think so. But I did some work with Suzanne because she was still at South Bank, so we managed to, and we did some really good work with some other Black women researchers. So I can do stuff, and that's not stopping me. It's just I take my time, and I like the idea of taking my time, that I don't have a deadline, and nobody can tell me when I must deliver this particular project.
Yeah, I know.
So that to me is a way in which, let us say, I nourish my spirit and keep myself whole in the whole process. I don't want to be beholden to anyone in terms of my thinking. I want to think and write what I want to write when I want to write it.
Yes, Ashay, absolutely. So Pretty Dillon is saying, could you please tell us a bit more about the Black women's groups campaigns around, for example, reproductive rights, especially against the use of Depo-Provera? We didn't.
Okay, yes, that went back. That was, I'm trying to remember, that was in the issue. What we did with that was, once you get the information, there are several health issues. One was Depo-Provera, one was sickle cell, right? Once you get the information, you work with, for instance, with people in our group were nurses. What we really wanted to do was to make sure the information was out there. So we had to produce the leaflets, call the meetings, and then circulate them to either to women we know around hospitals or places where we knew women would be coming in contact, with advice, which we felt was not really, might be detrimental. But the main thing was to get the information out there about what was the dangers of everybody simply just taking this injection that we didn't have enough information about. Of course, we have some of this now, don't we, with all this, what they call the vaccine hesitancy. But when I think about the way in which people are so suspicious of vaccinations now compared to how willing they were in my time to take up something like Depo-Provera. But when you think about it, what was being offered then was something like a 3-month dose of a contraceptive pill.
Yeah.
We had to get the information out about what were the dangers, what were the people, and then people would make their own minds up, but we didn't support it at all.
Okay, great. There's loads of them. I'll try and just truncate some of these questions. So to know, this is David and Stephanie Fushtish. wants to know, what was it like being a part of the Black Panther? But you could link that maybe to the other question from Victoria MacDonald about the biggest challenge. What was the biggest challenge and best part of being part of the Black Panthers?
In the Panthers? Well, I loved it. That's me, but I'm not saying, I don't think, as I've said before, I don't think it was a good experience for every single person who was a part of it. I don't know if it's you or to some other person. I talked about, you know, the fact that there are people there who didn't follow the all right, let me start again. The best thing about it was the sense of community, being with people like yourself, being able to study with your friends, going out and doing your door-to-doors. I might have told you I did door-to-door with Linton, going to social events, people like Danny and Neil and Norma and other people like that. So there was a kind of social part of it. Going to dances, blues dances. We loved those.
Yeah, so you did have time to do those.
All
you did
of
have
that.
time to do those.
Listen, you're talking about young people, and I'm telling you, a large part of why I think if people are honest, that a large part of why young people are attracted to those organized, they see other young people there as well. So it's that sense of bonding, I think, which was important. The knowledge we gained from it, you know, in terms of the reading and so forth. For me, it also meant I was doing something that was helping the children. I was teaching during the week. So there were lots of things I felt that went together, that melded together, that worked for me. Yeah. That I could also take into my teaching as well, right? I would know about people like Amilcar Cabral because I'd read about him in the political literature, right? So you could take, or about Angela Davis. What was the hardest part of it? And the challenging part of it, I think it was there, but I think because of the kind of person I am, there was sexism, chauvinism, but I didn't really see it as such a terrible thing. Certainly not for myself, because I felt that I got a certain amount of respect in the organization because, one, I was slightly older. I said I was 21 and I was with people who were 19. And you know, when you're those age, and I was also a teacher. And I was one of the only teachers around. So I got a respect in that. But I think there's a certain amount of chauvinism which was challenging. And I think you had to take on a particular kind of tough role if you wanted to withstand it. That's why it's about somebody like Olive. Olive was respected, right? No, not man is gonna mess with her, right? And they didn't mess with me either, but I wasn't so tough. Oh, Althea, oh God, no.
Oh yeah.
Right? So it was there, and that's why I'm not going to deny it, because I know there's some women who for whom it was very difficult, and they had to deal with sexual harassment. Yes, I didn't have to. And also the other thing about why I didn't have to do it, if to be honest, my partner was also in the movement, right?
Yes.
And you know, there are all kinds of these little dynamics that shade how men will treat you. Yes.
Oh wow.
I feel like I have a very powerful voice. So and having those kinds of so I think sexual harassment was an issue. But I also think that one thing I think is an issue, and I think this is for some of the young men in particular, it's that some of being in an organization is about, and I think I'm hinting at it really, it's about role playing, and role playing the tough person working acting in a certain way. Yes. So I'm thinking of several young men I knew in the organization who were very bright, who should have maybe have gone on to university, right? And who didn't, because it wasn't seen as the correct thing to do at that time, right? Or somebody who might have gone on a demonstration and had an altercation with the police. And there are ways, you know, police aren't the be all and end all, and they're not always bright. There are ways in which you can deal with the police. And if you're not, if you always go for the confrontation, they will arrest you. And in those days, when you got a police record, it was something that was really stayed with you. Certainly, I knew that if I got arrested, I'd probably lose my job as a teacher. Those are the most challenging things in understanding in how to play. And it took us a few years, I think, to get to understand those things and to understand your rights and to know things like taking down the names of police or using certain words or you know, conveying to them that you understood your rights and you knew the ways in which, you know, they could come up before disciplinary hearing.
Yeah. I'm looking at the part as well. Yeah. There is a question, but I'm not sure. It's from Alex Newton. But it's one of those questions my brain is going. It's saying, where do you think UK activism should be focused on today? But I don't know, is that a question that you could be answering, or I don't know.
Well, I could only answer it generically. Literally, I used to go to London every year and spend a couple months there. But since COVID, I haven't been in London. But I don't think I could say I think it is so local. Yes, it's so dependent on the needs of the situation. I wouldn't be able to say that. You have to look at where those particular issues that we fought or where they've resurfaced. And in the article that I've done on Black British civil rights, I've talked about the organizations that are in the UK now and what I see them working on, yes? And some of it is the same issues. You have the organizations like Forefront. I can't remember. I'll send you the article quite soon. But they're talking about some of the same things. It's about police deaths in police custody. Yes?
Yes.
They're talking about just the general incarceration of young Black people. They're talking about the prison, the school to prison pipeline, the gangs matrix. Those are things that are still affecting. They weren't expressed in the same way, but they're about the same thing, about the destruction of young Black people. Yes? So those things are still there. And it might start with education. It might mean that you have to have education as part. Part of what you're doing. But you also see in education as being the beginning of what could lead to something much worse. So I couldn't say definitely, but from the organizations I'm seeing, they're still seeing that those are the things. Exclusions will lead you on a particular path. Yes?
Yeah.
Referral systems, isolation units, the violence. And when I say violence in schools, I'm not talking about the children. I'm talking about the violence of the systems and the processes of schooling. Yes? Leads to that kind of, leads down to the pipeline.
Thank you so much for that, actually. I'll just take a couple and then we really need to go because it's pushing on 8:30. But there's one from Dr. Amabini in the house. Dr. Amabini, who is a historian and my good sister, who is asking a question. There's another one before that, but let's see what that is. It's saying, what were the reasons for the demise of OWAD? And is there a need for a similar or different organization among Black African women today, do you think?
we get asked this question. I was listening back.
All the time, isn't it?
It's actually in the afterword of the OAD, of the afterword of the Heart of the Race.
The new
and what I would say, there's some things that are presented as being issues, and I'm not sure if they were the actual issues. There was a thing about Afro-Asian unity, about whether what you now call political blackness, well, what we really recognize, what we saw at the time as a common response to colonialism and imperialism and racism. So so that meant that certain kind of unity, Afro-Asian unity, was required, and people talk about it now as political blackness. So some people say that I don't think that was a cause. The other thing that people say was sexuality, was the fact that there are a lot of, I think at the second conference, not the first one, that was a launch, the second one, a lot of issues came up where lesbian women came and felt that they were not being recognized. I don't think that, I don't believe that was necessarily the case, because I know as somebody who was involved at that time, that we certainly made space for any additional, because once you set up a program, there were lesbian women in BWG and in all those organizations. Once you set up if other people come up and a group wanted another panel, then that would have been accommodated. I think sometimes people think of OWAD as this kind of big organization, but it was really an umbrella, right? Mm-hmm. It was really a forum for Black women to meet. There were people who came there as individuals, but there was BWG, Southall Sisters, East London Black Women. There were a lot of different women's organizations. And as Suzanne reminded me, a lot of the work was done in those organizations, right? So when you come together, I think it was just too much to take on in one organization without a management or organizational structure at the center. What we had at the center was really FOAD, which was the newsletter of OWAD, right? But a separate apart, what else we had were these different women's organizations, and they were all very different. There were some that were had men in their group, yes. There were some that were socialist women, yes. There were some that come out of radical feminist tradition, let's put it that way. So there were many different, and OWAD was just a forum, and I think too much was expected of it, and it really, I think it really collapsed under the weight of so many expectations that it will be all things to all people, not just be all things. It can reflect all of these different myriad, but it couldn't take on the work for them. You had to do that work. Yes. So for instance, if you had a group, women's group, who wanted to focus simply on reproductive rights as an example, that group had to caucus, right? They couldn't come to me and say that I must do that. That group had to say, yes, this is what we want to do. Let's find like-minded women and let's meet on that, and let's report back to OWAD, or let's make sure that our concerns are met in FOWAD. But I think people wanted something that was more structured, but I don't think there is enough of us to carry a kind of strong central structure forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense, because you know, a lot of the times, from my experience in being part of organization, there's no like big central you know, committee per se all the time. Everybody has that voice, and everyone is valued. And sometimes, you know, that's the art, if you like, the political art of activism and collectivism.
Yes.
is that everybody has a voice. And if you, sometimes I think people expect to be told and have it be managed and stuff like that. And it's not, there's an institution there. This is the
exactly.
It's not like work. It's not like a workplace environment. But I don't think we.
But it is work. And if you think about
work, yeah.
all these women, myself included, working full-time jobs, with your kids behind you coming to meetings. What you're doing is making your contribution. It was all voluntary. There isn't a central structure. Anybody who wanted to organize around a particular topic, that was possible, but you were responsible for that particular area.
Yeah. Sister Dr. Amma's thanking you for that response. She says, historical hindsight is a wonderful thing. Perhaps there should have been a charter or principles or basic program that all the diverse groups coalesce around, i.e. minimalist program to unite around. So she's saying, yeah, it was a very clear response, but I wanted to get quick to wrap up because there are lots of questions still coming, but there is one that I thought might be good to end on, and this was really about, can you say?
Can I just say something, just one thing?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very quickly. There is an expectation that organizations are going to last forever. BWG lasted for 13 years, 15 years. OED as a big forum lasted for 4 years. You know, organizations come up and they fall, yes? And then new ones will come up with those ideas. For instance, the suggestion that they made about the charter and so on. Maybe the next generation, OED 2.0, yes? OED 2.0 will do that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is what I was trying to get to with this final, because it's from Jodie Keith, who's asking, she said, thank you very much for this event. Can you say anything about, for example, where your interest in literature and reading might have began as a child or young person? Was there a particular person in your family or school who inspired that in you?
Oh, yes, yes. My great aunt Sarah in Fairy Hill, she had born in 1880. Same year as my grandmother, my great aunt Sarah. She was the first place I went to school. She had a little school on a veranda with a slate, and she taught me how to read. And then my mother, who was very, as you can see in the early picture, she was a real fashionista. She used to get old copies of Jet magazine, and they had little captions. And I used to read those little captions at the bottom, or try and read those little captions. So it goes back to my mother and my great aunt Sarah on her little veranda in Fairy Hill, Portland.
That is absolutely the best place to end our conversation, because we did a full and wonderful circle and we came right back to your ancestors who on whose shoulders you continue to stand and stride as well. Thank you so much for that. We call their names all the time and we remember them, and I am so grateful to have been able to speak with you for a second time. I didn't get to mention, because I was hoping that she might be on here, Sister Nzinga Asata, who is one of our community activists, a beautiful sister. She went to your school as well. I don't know what generation she's in, but she also went to Lavender Hill.
Okay.
And we did we did a different version of this with her as well. So okay. Yeah, so she would have been here as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. I see you there, and thank you everybody else, even those I don't know, and for the over 100 people who are still there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so it's great.
I feel quite refreshed. I can go and do my exercises.
Great. Good. Tony, do you want to, should we hand back to you now?
No, that's it for now. That's it. All
okay.
done.
So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Sister Beverley, yeah, enjoy
Okay
your
then.
class.
So shall I sign off now?
You could just press leave as we were going to do, and
I
everybody.
know how to sign off.
Okay, we just leave. Enjoy, everyone. Thank you, guys. Thank you all my.
Okay then. Bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.